Ladies and germs, germs and ladies, cats and dogs, children of all ages, you know who it is. It's the kid. It's Unc Just, the pizza freak, always kicking at that pizza frequency. What does that mean? I'm glad you asked. It means I love talking about pizza. I love making pizza, but mostly I love sharing pizza with people that I give a ship about, breaking bread with people that I care about. And I have a sneaking suspicion that you too also vibrate at that pizza frequency. That is where we resonate. And that is why you're here. This is the Slow Rise office hours. Geez, Monday, February 8th. 2021. That's correct. Office hours, Monday, February 8th, 2021. To those of you who have been here with us before, welcome back. I cannot wait to see your smiling faces eventually, maybe. And if you have never been here, welcome, welcome. So what we do, these are the office hours. We started doing office hours every week. We were originally doing for 2 hours, but it was a lot to be on for 2 hours on Mondays when we're working every other day. And so what we've done is we slimmed it down to an hour. And basically, if you've taken a class with us, or if you've had the opportunity to watch or participate in any of the VOD, video on demand classes that we've pre-recorded and have available on the Slow Rise website, this is your chance. This is the forum. It's open. We want everybody to come and ask questions because, you know, making pizza is not a, it's not a, you know, it's not black and white. You know, there's a lot of gray in there. Questions often lead to other questions. There are variables in that pizza equation. Noel and I often talk about that. So this is Slow Rise office hours. Here's the dealio. I'm going to bring Noel on. We have about an hour. This is what I want you guys to do. We're not going to bring everybody on. We are going to try to go through the questions, as many as we can within the hour that we have available. If we do not get to your question, I do apologize. However, you know, we are doing this for free. So we're going to try to get through as many as we can. And if we do not get to, I apologize, but just come back and see us next weekend or next Monday as well. Here's the dealio. We're going to do questions in the Q&A. The chat, I encourage everybody else to enter the chat and chat back and forth amongst yourselves. If someone has a question or we're talking about a specific topic, please, please, please don't be afraid to put your 3 1/4 cents in there. Please use the chat to say, hey, I'm so-and-so. I live this place. I love this type of pizza. I like this type of hydration. Here is my Instagram handle. Here is my Facebook feed. You know, any of those things. We're attempting to create a pizza community here. So the chat is for you all to discuss back and forth, say hello, introduce yourselves, you know, share back and forth between you guys. But the Q&A is for us to answer questions. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask you guys, please, please, please. Hey, it's so-and-so. I've taken this class, and here's my one question. If you have many questions, we will try to get to them, but we want to make sure everybody's questions get answered. Please, please, please do not ask a paragraph of multifaceted questions. We'd like to keep this going. If we do have more questions, which often in pizza making we do end up having, what we'll try to do is we'll try to bring you on at that point to be a panelist so Noel can ask you questions. And the reason we want to know what classes you have either taken or watched on the VOD is because based on which questions, based on which classes you have participated in, that means you might get a different answer. And that's just the nature of pizza. So not only do we want to know what level you're at and, you know, how many times you played with us before, but we're also interested in how to proceed with answering the question. So without any further ado, 5 minutes in, I'm going to bring him on, the man, the myth. Guys, go ahead and load your questions into the Q&A. Hey, it's so-and-so. I've taken this class, and here is my question regarding this. And multiple questions, just go ahead and keep coming in the Q&A because that's what we're going to do. We're going to roll through the Q&A, and then at the end, if we have any extra time or extra questions, we'll just kind of open it up. So I'm going to go ahead and bring him on, the man, the myth, the legend, the reason that everybody is here. No, Mr. Slow Rise himself. No, Slow Rise Pizza Brohner. No, Bluebella Pizza is brother.
Justin, I can't hear anything ringing. What's going on over there?
I don't know. What do you think's going on here?
I think you have a fancy new headset, and it's affecting your ability to ring your big blue bell. That's what I think.
Sometimes maybe I have my background noise, all these new audio settings. Maybe I have my, see, now here's suppressed background.
Interesting. See, they got this with the new audio settings. I better check mine.
Yeah,
Hey,
here's
look, all of a
medium.
sudden my head's getting cut off over here. What is going on?
So medium,
everything's getting cut off. What
there we
is
go.
going on?
I
Be
had to do
careful
my,
when you upgrade your Zoom settings, wouldn't you say, Justin? Oh, I
oh,
gotta go on. See, I just upgraded. Now I have to go manually to widescreen.
yeah,
That's how I set it up.
I don't like it when it zooms in. I can barely see your second fridge.
I mean, thank you, Justin, for reminding me that I do have a second fridge, and I'm one of the privileged
Yeah,
few.
I
I look so tall when I
fridge
get
and
cut off here. People will think I'm tall, won't they?
I don't know what you're talking about.
Exactly. All right, Justin, we have a lot of questions coming in. We don't have the biggest crowd this week, but you know what? We have a lot of good questions. So I know that there's a lot of things I want to cover. We got a lot of cool classes coming out and some cool live stuff and all kinds of good things. And maybe we'll bring people on to discuss nitty gritty. But why don't we start with some of the Q&A questions right now?
Okay.
And let's do this together, shall we?
Yeah, sure.
So how about this? You throw me the short ones. I saw like a big one, a big question, long, even though one question very long. I'll start reading that, and you hit me up with some of the shorter ones. We'll see if we can attack this together. What do you say?
Okay, sounds good to me. I'm going to go ahead and let you read David's, and then I'm going to jump on to Timothy's. Timothy's saying, hey, I was in class. I was in the last week's intermediate class. So last week we did the intermediate class. I believe that was my birthday, maybe. New York pizza, great. I wonder what the difference I wonder what is difference flavor. Okay, I wonder what the difference in flavor is if using a pre-ferment. Advantages, harder.
Good. Excellent question. All right. So in the intermediate class we did last week, it was a wood-fired pizza class. And we were using...
No. We did the, I'm
John
sorry.
Butler?
I believe we did the one the day before, just the
you're
New
right.
York,
We did
just
the intermediate
class.
Good,
Yeah.
good.
So,
all right. Thank you for that. All right. So let's see here. I would say that there was a couple of questions there, right? So the first question is, what would the difference be? I wouldn't say there'd be a huge flavor difference if you used a pre-ferment. So it really kind of depends on the pre-ferment that you use. Generally speaking, for pre-ferments, you're going to get better fermentation, better color, better aroma. You could get better flavor too, but it really depends on the pre-ferment that you use. If you're going to use a sourdough, right, in place of the instant dry yeast, then you'll definitely get more acidity, more complexity, things like that. What was the follow up within that? They were wanting to know it would make the dough harder.
yeah, advantage, like more difficult. I don't think harder, like as far as chew.
No. Yeah, I wouldn't say it makes it harder. So you have to do a calculation. And so instead of 0.2% instant dry yeast, you would use 200 grams of starter.
Mm-hmm.
And you'd have to pull probably 100 of that 200 grams. If it was equal parts flour and water, you have to pull 100 grams of flour out of the recipe. So if the recipe called for 1,000 grams, you'd end up with 900. If the recipe called for 650 grams of water, you have to pull out 100. So that's 550. Other from that, I think you'd have a perfectly good recipe. One of the things that makes it harder is that besides managing the fermentation, you have to manage the acidity, right? And so the longer you leave your dough in cold fermentation, the more sour that it gets, right? And that could be a good thing if that's what you're looking for, but you have to be careful because at a certain point, the acidity is going to kind of eat the gluten, and that could also be good because it makes your dough more extensible. But then at a certain point, it'll make it weak and possibly over fermented, and then it'll make the dough hard to handle.
Mm-hmm.
So in that way, it would be more difficult, harder for sure.
Yeah, and I just want to jump on, if you're doing like a poolish or a big, just getting those schedules down and getting them correct. If you don't have a quote unquote controlled temperature environment, you're going to be riding the times there, so that can be a little difficult as well.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you say, no?
I would say. And one of the things that we do is we try to divide all of our classes between what I call beginner, intermediate, and advanced. And the big difference between the intermediate and the advanced is that the intermediate does not cover pre-ferments by design, because you have to really get your recipe and your process down before you introduce pre-ferments. And we also don't go into high hydration dough, so 80% or higher. Once you get into the advanced classes, we cover all the pre-ferments, bigas, pouliches, pet fermentes, levans, whatever else I'm forgetting. And then we also go into higher hydration, 85, 90, 100 plus percent hydration.
Mhm. I just did an edit on the video on demand with Attilio's class where we did a New York style with, I believe he uses a sourdough starter, right?
Yep,
Yeah,
definitely.
yeah. So now he did his at 75% hydration. That's just the way he likes to do it. So when you start messing with all those numbers, you're gonna have to get your calculator and your spreadsheets out, I would say. So Tim, I mean, it can be a little bit more difficult, but also, do we have a rule of thumb as far as bigas and pouliches that the biga might give you some characteristics where the pouliche might give you others?
Yeah, we do. You know what? I don't think it's really. I wouldn't want to answer those questions right now because that could lead me down the rabbit hole and we could be
Mhm.
here all night.
Copy
So
that.
yeah, if you want to get into that, come to the Advanced One class or buy a great book, buy Advanced Bread and Pastry, buy Bread by Peter Hamelman. That's a good one. Buy Tartine by Chad Robertson. Those are all great books and give you a lot of insight into the pizza and bread making process.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Ray is saying, hi, I did the VOD beginner class. Thank you, Ray. What is the conversion to use fresh yeast? And is there any advantage or disadvantage to fresh yeast? Does using heritage flours, Hayden Mills flour, change hydration?
Okay, there's a compound question there. I'll do my best. Thank you for
Mhm.
telling us what class you were in. So if you want to use fresh yeast, what I would do is use about 1/3 of the amount called for. Uh, let's see. No, the opposite way. 3 times the amount called for in our beginner recipe. So
Mhm.
a full batch would have been 2 grams of yeast. That's instant dry yeast, and a full batch would be about 6 grams of fresh yeast. About 6 grams of fresh yeast. But another thing I'll bring up is that fresh yeast on the West Coast isn't very fresh because there's nobody manufacturing it here, as far as I know. And so what I try to say is if you're on the East Coast or somewhere where they manufacture it, nearby, then by the time you get it, it'll still be fresh. But the shelf life is short already on that stuff. I would say it's 10 days. And so if you're getting it after 5 or 6 or 7 days, you really only have a short shelf life. And so unless you're a professional bakery and you really require it, I would say instant dry yeast is the way to go. What was the
Right.
last part of that question, Justin?
And it's asking about heritage flours, Hayden Mills flour.
Yeah.
Does using those type of flours change the hydration or affect the hydration?
It does. It does. It does it in a couple of ways. Number one, a lot of those heritage grains are very different. They're either much stronger or much weaker, based on the process, based on what's in the flour, if they're sifted or not. And so you really have to go to the website of the mill or the farmer and find out exactly what's in those flours. I mean,
Mhm.
Hayden Mills is really good, and they're pretty consistent. But that's also another issue with regard to like smaller mills is that they're getting smaller batches, and it's like a single malt scotch, right? It's going to vary from season to season, batch to batch, and so you have to really be careful. I don't use those flours as my performance flour unless I can really be on every mix and watching them. So I would use those flours 20%, 30%, maybe even 40%, but you really got to watch. Maybe you hold back some water when you're mixing just in case, or depending, maybe you hold back some flour when you're mixing just in case. So the hydration of the flours ranges, the strength of the protein ranges. A lot of things range. So you might get a higher quality flour, but you're also going to get a wider swing in the specs on the flour. Justin, what are you going to say?
Well, I was going to say, what is that? I don't really know what that means. What is heritage? What is a heritage flour?
It's a good one. So sometimes I use the term heritage, sometimes I use the term heirloom. And I didn't start learning about that stuff until I started buying tomatoes at the farmer's market. And I was like, well, why are some of them green and some of them red? Why are there so many shades of red? Why do some of them have stripes? Why do some of them have dots? And it turns out that there used to be a lot of different strains of tomatoes, of apples, of flour, but they found out that some of them were better used to bring to market because they had a longer shelf life, or they traveled better in extreme temperatures, or even like tomatoes on the highway. They're going long distances in trucks, and you have less shrinkage when you have a tomato with a thick skin that responds to a refrigeration well. So I guess the same thing is true of flours. A lot of the heritage grains they just stopped using because they would ferment in the bag, or they would they would attract vermin, or maybe they were too strong in flavor or color or aroma. So I think now a lot of people are getting back into those grains, and I think it's really cool. Um, I think they're particularly good for, any time where you want more flavor than you can get with fermentation, right? I particularly notice it with cakes and pastries, that you can really taste those heirloom wheats and the rye flours a lot more than in bread. But I also know a lot of bread bakers that are doing great things with heirloom wheats. But it takes a steady hand, and it takes, using those wheats over and over again, so you kind of get a knack for the range of ways that they can change from week to week, month to month.
Awesome,
Not
awesome,
easy.
awesome.
Not easy.
All right, Ray is saying, okay, that was the one we just did. Sorry. All right, here we go. Do you want to tackle David's at all? Do you want to look at
Yeah,
that
let's
one?
look at David. So he
Okay.
was saying, I was trying to follow the general principles of the beginner one class with a sourdough pre-ferment 100% hydration. I'm wondering about when to add this to the mix. I still haven't figured out a good way to integrate my starter after an auto lease. That's a good point. I'm going to stop there for a minute. So
Okay.
here's the thing with the beginner class. We teach you to put your yeast in after the auto lease. That's the classic way. Same with the salt. But because the starter has water in it, and what you're trying to do is try to hydrate your flour as well as possible, I would say that you want to put your sourdough or your levain in before the auto lease. Okay, so that's a good thing, because you'll end up getting that flour hydrated, and you'll be less likely to have clumps. But you can't go as long on the auto lease, because instead of delaying the fermentation process until you add the yeast, you're actually starting it pretty quickly. So in the beginner class and in the intermediate and even in the advanced class, we talk about some of the advantages to going long on the auto lease, right? Not 10 or 20 minutes, but 2 hours, 4 hours, even overnight. You can't really do that if you're adding the levain in before the auto lease, so you want to be careful about that. And then he says, it always seems like to come out a little clumpy, which I would say that's true. I add sourdough first, then salt, and a few minutes into the folding. Yeah. Are there hand mixing techniques that would help me? I'm guessing, for example, that at this stage, I really don't want to mix too very much or use the pincher method, because that would break up the gluten. You know what? Here's the thing. I think you can use the pincher method, and you're not going to break up the gluten, because when a hand mix is so gentle. So I really think you can get away with that. But I also think that if you add in the levain before the auto lease, you're not going to have any of these issues at all, because it should all just blend in really nicely, especially if he says, Justin, that his hydration on the levain is 100%.
Oh, yeah.
So
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think we hopefully answered all of those questions. If not, he can jump on and ask some verbal questions. That was
Yeah,
a loaded question, David.
Yeah, David actually has a follow-up there. So let me go to that follow-up one
Let's do
real
it.
quick. So I failed to okay, that's David, and he's working through the beginner one on demand. Second question: during the pre-shape, Noel,
hmm
you mentioned that letting the dough undergo several sequences of tightening and relaxing is really good for the dough. Why is that? So when we do the pre-shape, you kind of do a shape, and then you let it relax a little bit, and then we ball and let it. So I think that's his question. What is the kind of like messing with the dough and then relaxing the dough, messing with the dough and relaxing the
I
dough?
mean, it's a couple of things. The first thing is that the 14 steps of baking are around because they've been doing it for so long that it's just become like the guiding principles for bread and pizza making. And we know that these things work. All right. So let's just accept that tradition is tradition, and that we're not climbing up some tree that's not gonna flower and give us fruit. All right. So let's just assume that. Then once you assume that that's true, you want to be like, well, why do you want to do it? What are the actual benefits? And so here's the most important thing. If you hurry up and do something quickly, right? I work for a lot of clients that run very busy pizzerias, and they're always looking to take away steps and to save time. If you have to correct anything at all, right? If the mix came out too cold, or the water came out too warm, or the batch of flour that you're dealing with is a little different than the last batch of flour, the more steps in the process you have to check in with the dough, stretching and folding, bench resting, pre-shaping, second bench rest, a variety of ways to do the final shape. All of these ways that you check in allow the baker, the mixer, the prep person, the final cook, to just dial in the fermentation and the gluten development, right? And so if you have a piece of dough that for whatever reason when you're cutting it up is too cold and under fermented, extend your bench rest. right? If you have a piece of dough that for whatever reason it comes out and you feel like it's over fermented, then shorten the bench rest. Or if it's too extensible, then give it a extra love and care on the pre-shape, and maybe even a little love and care on the final shape. But by the same token, during every step of the process, you're looking to repeat the steps that you've made before. And by being able to check in so many times, it really allows you to dial in your dough so that you just have absolute uh, like sameness from day to day, batch to batch, week to week. And that's one of the things. If you don't know what you're looking for when you're dividing and shaping, when you're stretching and folding, when you're bulk fermenting, when you're doing an improved mix, all of those steps, then you may not be benefiting your dough. But once you do it again and again, you start to see certain patterns. I think that you will find that not leaving out any of the parts of the process and working through the artisan fermentation and gluten development schedule will be a benefit to you and to the overall product.
Yeah. I mean, we talk about like messing with the dough and then letting the dough relax, and messing with the dough and letting the dough relax. I mean, just that process and that consistency within the technique, we think gives you a superior product, right? No.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that's why we do it. So, all right, Ray. Ray is saying, "Hey, I did the VOD beginner class. Awesome. This is the one we were just talking about. Oh, wait. No, we already answered this one. Sorry. This is the fresh. Why? What am I doing here? Okay.
You have to,
I got to get rid of these bros. Marcy, hello. I did the VOD intermediate and advanced. Question. So in an ABS 50 spiral mixer, which can do a 55 pound bag of flour
Good.
or 110 pound dough,
Okay.
would it be a bad idea to do a batch of dough with the 50-pound bag of King Arthur Special?
Would it be a bad idea? No.
To do dough with the 50-pound bag of King Arthur Special patent, which I believe is that their bread or their
That's their bread
AB?
flour. That's their
Okay.
bread flour.
I know you spoke about friction factor, and this mixer has a low RPM, low 135, and a high of 272.
Sure. So here's the thing. I think we should actually get Marcy on because she's
Okay.
asking a complicated question, and there's a
Okay.
lot of things to it. So if Marcy wants to come on, I think we should have a little
Marcy.
conversation here.
Marcy, come on down. You're getting promoted to
Yes.
panelist because, like I said, often your questions lead to other questions, everybody. So, Marcy, if you don't want to show your camera, we totally understand. Oh, there you are. Hello. Oh, if you don't mind, let's unmute. Perfect. Hello.
Marcy, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Thank you for taking our intermediate and our advanced class. Are you a professional?
Yeah.
You sure are. Excellent. All right, so let's unpack a few things if you don't mind. I like the King Arthur Special flour. I like the protein level. I like the specs. I think it's a good flour. It has great fermentation tolerance. I use it all the time. So good for you for using that. I love the mixer that you're using, the ABS 50. I think it's a killer mixer. I would not. It does have a low friction factor, but it has a high number of RPM. So 135 on first speed is actually pretty quick. And that will increase your friction factor compared to some of the French mixers or the Italian mixers. So let's make sure we're on the same page. So you have a gentle mixer by style because you have a dough hook that goes around and you have a bowl that spins in the same direction. That definitely reduces friction compared to like a Hobart style planetary mixer where the bowl is fixed and you're really hammering the dough.
Right.
So tell me what it is that you're trying to understand, and I can help you understand it better.
I'm trying to figure out to do what would the largest batch of dough would I be able to do without the friction factor being so high? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Do I have to cut it in half?
That's great. No.
For ease of a recipe, 50-pound bag is
here's what I would say. What kind of are you trying to make pizza dough?
Yeah.
What kind of pizza dough are you trying to make?
We're trying the high hydration for
great.
in a Lloyd 10 by 14 pan.
So here's the good news, and there's no bad news. You have the right mixer for that mix. You have the right flour for that mix, and I think you can do everything you want. Here's what I would say. Of all of the spiral mixers on the market, the ABS is one of the most it's one of the more aggressive mixers, right? It's a good style of mixer to have, but it has a high number of RPMs. And so you just have to be super careful that you really want to dial in your friction factor. And so once you mix a dough and you mix it a few times, you should know the range. So let's say your average friction factor is 20 and your desired dough temperature is 74. So you know that you want to be at around 54 after you do your 5-minute first speed mix and then your auto lease if you're doing one, right?
Right.
So once you get there, and you know that you're going to be between, let's say, 72 and 76 every time, worst case scenario, then it's all about dialing in the fermentation and the gluten development so that when it comes out, you're shaping it perfectly, right? You're getting it into the fridge if it's too warm, you're letting it stay out if it's too cool. So I don't think there's anything wrong with what you're doing. If you were doing a New York style dough, right, and you were much lower in hydration, then I would caution against going into second speed, right?
Oh.
If you're doing a high hydration dough and you're mixing at 270 RPMs, you're right in the groove there. That's amazing.
Okay,
so
great.
The only thing that I noticed that happens is that if you mix a really small batch, your friction factor will go way down because you don't have as much connection with the hook and the bowl.
Right.
And if you do a really big batch, like you fill it up to capacity, then you'll have a higher friction factor. So if you account for that with water temperature, I think you're going to be great. Those are great mixers. I've used them. I wish I'd have used them more. I've never worked in a bakery or pizzeria that had one, but I've worked at test kitchens that have had them. I think I used one. Nicky Justo has one at he has a test center up in San Francisco, and I was lucky enough to play with one of those last time I was up there.
Okay.
So they're mostly found in the artisan bread world, and for good reason. They're super sturdy. They'll last forever. Did you buy it used or new?
New, and it comes March 8th, so we haven't.
Oh, it's just coming.
Yeah, that's why I haven't done it yet.
Oh,
so
no. Okay, I thought you were already using it.
Like,
oh, no, you're fine. You're fine. And you know what you should do? Like do a couple of mixes and then come to the office hours and we can look at your friction factor. We can look at all your temperatures and I'll help figure out a way. What style of pizza are you trying to make? Is it like a Detroit style, Sicilian style, Roman?
We're doing it in Detroit pans. I want to get a Frico, but I like how light and airy
super light and airy,
the super hydrated dough is. So that's what we're trying to.
Are you going to do a par bake?
Yeah, we have to be able to keep
for
up
service.
with the demand. Yeah.
And so, what about a fermentation schedule? How long?
I would like to do it to get onto a longer, just in case there's a batch of dough that.
No, that's never gonna. No, that's never gonna happen.
You know what I mean?
You just adjust. Yeah. So depending on what you're trying to do, what I would say is, if I want a really bready pizza, super light and airy, and I'm not worried about it going to the edge of the pan every time, then you can do like you can mix on a Monday and serve on a Tuesday. But you need a good, for me, 3, 4, 5 hours for the dough after you shape it to kind of get into the pans. If you're going to proof it in the pan, that's a big thing too, because you have a warm environment to proof it in.
We're going to have enough Lloyd pans to proof in the pan, and then great. On your one class, you're talking about a proofer. So I was wondering if I would put them in the pans with lids, and you take 2 stacks.
That's the best.
Put them in the proofer.
That's the best. Yeah, if you have those pans, that works really well.
Yeah.
The other thing, the 2 things that I notice is that people do things 2 different ways. A lot of people like put way more dough in a pan for this style than traditional, maybe Detroit would, and so, but they're looking for something that's really light and really airy with a more open hole structure, and you can really get that. It will be more bready though. I've seen really good results too with people who. They don't do a long bulk like what I recommend in the advanced class. They do a very short bulk, and they round all their dough, but they put it and they let it relax for a day or 2, even 3. And then when you get that dough out, you can, if you have to, you can dock it. You can kind of push it down with your hands. You put it into a pan and don't use olive oil. right?
Okay.
Use lard, use Crisco, and it works as glue, right? Adam Kuban did a class, has done a couple classes with us where he does a bar style pizza, and he shows how you he shows how if you put the glue into the corners of the pans that you can kind of stretch it and use it as like kind of as glue, and then it kind of holds to those corners, and once it holds and doesn't pull back, you don't actually need as much dough. You get a less doughy pizza.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we baked a couple off, and it looked like an old school cake high in the center. So then we dimpled it a little bit.
I'm not a huge fan of Dockers, but dimpling is good.
Yeah.
And really, if you nail your times and your temperatures, you really shouldn't have to like torture your dough with any Dockers. But I'm not against one. Probably you want to have one in the pizzeria just in case.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much.
Welcome. Nice to see you, Marcy. Come back again, all right? I want
will.
to know what happens when you get your ABS.
Yep.
I know. I want to see that doji dough. It sounds delicious. Thanks, Marcy.
There you go.
Okay,
great.
Thank you.
All right. Live answered that one. All right. Our buddy Gary. Gary, my friend and yours, Gary. Okay. So Gary has taken all the class, or not all of them, but intermediate 1 and 2 and advanced 1 classes. My intensive mix dough went into the fridge at 74 degrees, right? Came out of the fridge after 39 hours. That was a 39-hour retard at 51 degrees. Noel says to rest the dough for 2 hours before cutting it into portions, but also he says he likes to shape the dough at 50 degrees, which presents a conundrum. Should I wait 2 hours and let the dough come to room temp before cutting, or do that when the dough reaches 50 degrees instead? So is it time or is it temp? Is it the 2 hours or is it the temp?
What scares me is that dough is sitting for 39 hours at 50 degrees. If it's sitting for that long, it's in danger of over fermenting. So I would ball it immediately, not wait any time. Also, I mean, I would like to hold that dough in secondary fermentation after balling at 50 degrees, but you're at risk of running out of gas when you let your dough. I mean, the dough we use in the advanced 1 class has a lot of yeast.
Right.
At least 50% more than the New York dough, and sometimes 100% more than other doughs that we've used. Sometimes 200% more. So you've got to be careful with that dough because it's going to come out and it's going to be runny. It's going to be overhydrated. It's going to be over fermented, and then it's not going to do any of the things you want it to do. So if I were you, Gary, I would make sure that dough sits for 39 hours at 40 degrees. Try to let it come up to temp, however long it takes, 1 or 2 hours till it gets to about 50, and then shape it. But if it's already at 50, shape it immediately.
And then secondly, because Gary is such a rebel, Gary the rebel, how do we determine the amount of dough required for any particular pan size? Like, is there?
There's no way.
You can't do, because I know that there's not one size fits all. It's going to depend on what style you're doing, correct? Because because the focaccia is one thing. The focaccia Genovese is another thing. New York style for 16-inch is 16 ounces. That's the rule of thumb. But the reality is if you have an 18-inch or a 20-inch pie, the surface area, you can't just say, well, it's not. You can't add it by inches. You actually have to do you have to figure out the square inch.
The area.
You have to figure out the area to make it work.
I wish there was an easy answer to that one, Gary.
Gary's doing the Detroit or Sicilian. Is there? That's what he's asking for.
Because here's the thing: people mean so many different things by Detroit or Sicilian. Most people who make Detroit style pizza have never been to Detroit. Most people who make Sicilian style pizza have never been to Sicily. So I don't know what you're really asking for. If you're asking for traditional numbers, if you go to Detroit and you go to Buddy's, that's going to be one number. If you go to Toronto and you go to Descendant style DSP, that's going to be another number. If you go to Justin at Apollonia's in Los Angeles on Wilshire Boulevard, it's going to be another number. So, Justin, I think it goes back to your rule about your own pizza equation, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I mean, I've been doing between 300 and 310 for my 8x10, and that's my Detroit. That's usually what I do in an 8x10, which is the smaller, not the big, huge one, but somewhere in there. And Yeah, like a 4 to 6 hour rise with a little bit of the Crisco in the edges, the glue, and it seems like it works. It works great. And I kind of just treat I kind of treat it like a focaccia. I like to dimple it and then top it and then let it rise, and it pushes all the cheese to the edge and stuff. So that's there we go, Gary. Thank you. All right.
Tough question.
Yeah, that's a tough one. All right. So Gary is here. Our other friend, Gary.
All 3 VODs.
Gary has taken everything, and he's been here with us a bunch. And he forgot to ask a question a few weeks back. We discussed letting the cold retard for 5 days. Now, that's a bulk for 5 days. And this was the improved mix. So this is the improved mix. And then I balled, and I placed the dough into the dough tray. I used half and then used the second half of the following day. Good or bad, or did I mess up? What's the DDP? What's the DDT before I'm ready to launch?
We gotta get him on for this.
Yeah, Gary, why don't you just come on over? Gary, I'm promoting you to panelist. Hopefully that's working. So yeah, if I remember correctly, Gary, it came out of the mix pretty cold. There he is.
He's coming.
No worries.
What's up, buddies?
How's it going, bud?
Good. How are you? Hope you had a good birthday.
Yeah. Oh, thanks, dude. I did. Good,
man. That's awesome.
I appreciate that.
The light's so dark. Anyways, I did what? Go ahead. No, sorry.
Well, so let me ask a few questions. So if you're doing an improved mix, does that mean you're doing a New York style dough?
Yes.
And if you're doing a New York style dough, are you doing 5 days of bulk fermentation?
Yes.
Why?
Because that's what you told me to do.
Wow. I don't know if I told you.
I probably said that you could push it because it came out so cold. I was like, just throw it in
hold
there.
on. You could push the fermentation, but when you have a low hydration or a mid hydration dough like 65%, were we talking about John Arena? We're talking about John Arena's recipe now. Okay, so John Arena is the only person I know that does a 5-day fermentation on a New York style dough, but he balls the dough after 1 hour and lets it sit in secondary fermentation for up to 5 days. So what I would worry about, Gary, is that your dough is going to get so super strong that it's not going to stretch to where you want it. I'm not saying you're not going to have an awesome dough, but you're really bucking tradition on a dough like that. You could get away with it with the advanced dough, 80 or 85 or 90% hydration, but I know that if I go up to 2 days with a dough between 60 and maybe 65%, man, 2 or more days, I can't stretch that dough. It just gets too strong.
Okay, so may I ask a quick question?
Yeah.
Awesome. All right, so improved mix.
Yeah.
But let's say 2 days.
2 days of bulk?
2 days of bulk, or is that too long?
I don't know. Why do you want to go 2 days of bulk?
I'm asking if I should or shouldn't. I don't need to.
You should not. So in the intermediate class and in the beginner class, here's what we give you the option of. You can do a bulk for 1 hour.
Okay.
You can do a bulk for 3 to 4 hours and then ball later that night and then make the same the next day. Or you can do an overnight bulk, right? And then ball and make the next day or put back for the day after that. So that'd be 2 days. So my experience is you never want to go 2 days on a bulk like that. It makes the dough too strong. Unless you have a really good reason. If you want to go 8 days on the total fermentation, then yeah, you can bulk for 5 days and let your dough relax for 3 if you have a specific reason to do it. But if you're just doing it to do it, for me, you're kind of asking for problems. If you just want to mess around, sure, mess around. Maybe you'll have a happy accident.
Okay, and then to clarify, after the balling, right? And then I have everything in the tray, I pull it out. Please remind me what the desired room, I don't want to say the R word, the temperature should be.
Well, it depends. We have a guy named Attilio who works with us, and he likes to let his dough get all the way up to 80 degrees. For him, the dough is the most active. It's soft. It bubbles up nicely. It's easiest to work with. It's sticky as hell, but he loves it.
Yeah, I mean, he's basically, imagine a beach, and instead of sand, it's semolina, and he's basically just throwing his dough into the semolina sand. I mean, so and that dough, you blow on it, and it basically becomes a pizza. There's no stretching. He doesn't he doesn't pick it up. He doesn't do. I mean, because it'll just fall right through his hand. I mean, it's basically like, okay, I blow on it and it's shaped. So it's just one of those technique things, 65, 70, 75, 80. Where's the performance that you're looking for, but also where's the threshold of you being able to work on the dough? Because Gary, you're at your house doing it in the dojo, you can probably work with it, but like when we scale up, like you try to get people in a restaurant environment working at 80 degree dough, and if you don't have somebody that's trained, you're probably throwing out a lot of those doughs. No.
And I'm so glad. Sorry, before you come in, I'm so glad that you highlighted that, because the room somehow, like in the kitchen, all of a sudden like the heat came on and it was around 75, 70, and exactly what you just described. It was like a big like jelly roll, in other words, like flopping around. Yep. And I was like, okay, grabbing the semolina, and as soon as it hit the peel, it was like sticking, and I was in that like panic mode of like throwing more semolina on, and Noel's like shaking his head, yes, exactly. And I was like, all right, and it wasn't that great. The first three, the last one was fine, but not to like where I like it. I like it airy, like, a nice crust, like fluffy, airy, and then if it goes thin, New York style traditional, like what we know, awesome. But it was a challenge for sure.
What kind of flour are you using?
I'm using what you highlighted with the previous question. I'm using the King Arthur right now. Special.
Yeah, that flour has a good fermentation tolerance, so it won't go bad. So I would just say stick to the rules. Don't go more than, let's say, 24 to 36 hours on bulk with a New York style dough, and see if you can't get a great dough out of that.
Okay.
If there's something you're not getting that you're looking for, like more extensibility or more strength, then you have to make some changes.
Okay.
But I would sure like to see what that dough looks like. Does it look as good as the dough and the pizza in your backgrounds, Gary?
Well, I was sending you photos and you were like, yeah, it looks good. And then back and forth with J-Dog.
Well, yeah, but that doesn't help us in the office hours.
Well, clearly, like, that's the artwork. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But I appreciate it. No, that's very helpful.
Next time you come, bring some photos and we'll let you share your screen, or you can put them up on the background, and we can figure out what we're talking about here. Because if you're making like huge inroads, we want to know what you're doing.
Yeah.
And if you're having huge failures, we want to learn from you. We want to know what you're doing.
Okay.
Yeah, I always like, just as a rule of thumb, usually I do, and I know Noel, I make my dough, it comes out 72, 74. I do a 2-day and then I ball, and then my secondary is anywhere between, 1 day to, 7 days. And by the end, that dough doesn't need to sit out for 4 hours. It needs to sit out for a half an hour, because even cold, it's the kind of dough that just, it's so relaxed, and like Noel says, there's nothing left for the yeast to eat. So by that time you're just kind of making a really funky flatbread with not a lot of life and a ton of like acid flavor. So it's just, once again, making and then taking those notes, Gary, so you know what you're looking for. So
for sure.
Gary, also when you send me pictures, I'm like, I either say it looks great or like I don't know about that. So you're not going to get a very detailed response from me. Right?
Okay.
Unless it looks really terrible or really amazing. Nature of the beast. I get too many messages, but keep it up. Keep up the good work.
So we had to do
office hours.
That's what we had to do office hours. It's just all right. Thanks, Gary.
I totally get it. And real quick, you guys got to check out Marcy's restaurants, man. She's out of this world. Yeah. Seriously. I couldn't believe she was on. I was like, whoa, holy crap. So hopefully she's still here. Big fan. Check them all out when you guys come out.
We're gonna have to look her up.
Yeah, Mars, if you are still here, please go ahead and put anything in the chat. We'd love to check out your restaurants. Thanks, Gary. We're gonna jump to these other questions. But
see you guys. Thanks, guys.
Of course. Good to see you.
You too.
All right. So Freddie is saying, let's see. Okay, so Freddie is saying, could you give an overview of optimal dough temperatures? And then continuing, I cold ferment New York style, 48 to 72 hour bulk. So this is kind of like where we were.
Can we find out one thing? What classes has he taken?
Yeah, Freddie, have you taken a class yet? Maybe.
That's how we know how to answer the question.
Thank you.
Let's skip that one for now, and we will come back to Freddie.
Yeah, that's all we have, really. Gary was saying happy belated to me.
Let's bring Freddie on then.
All right, Freddie, here it comes. Freddie is coming on. All right, here we go. Freddie, if you want to come on, show your video, and if you do not wish to show your video, you can just ask us the question by voice, if you can. Hopefully, Freddie is coming on.
Good.
Hopefully.
If he does not want to come on, that's fine. We need to find out what classes he's taken so we can answer the question properly. I know we have some people who are there. I would love to talk to Josh Hernandez if he's around. We haven't talked to Josh in a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
I think Freddie's coming on. I see his name appearing. That's progress.
There we go. I'm asking him to unmute, or
He's unmuting. I think he's unmuting.
There you go.
Can't tell if he's unmuting. Is he unmuting? Now he's unmuting.
Hey,
Great.
Hey guys.
Hello, sir. How are you?
I'm doing good.
Welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Actually, Noel, I found out about you through the interview you did with Peter Reinhardt.
Oh, great. I love that interview.
I joined today I'm about to take your advanced class.
Oh, great. Okay, good.
So what interested me was you mentioned Hypermix. And I've been making pizzas at home for about 10 years.
Good.
And I've learned to tailor my dough to my limitations of my home oven.
Excellent.
So
variables in the pizza equation.
Speaking our language, sir.
Yeah.
So I kind of use a little bit enriched doughs. I use ditastic malt. I'm using Tony Gianni's flour from Central Milling.
Awesome. I love Central.
Maybe a little bit of milk powder, which sounds weird, but
no. We're all about it.
A little bit of olive oil.
Great.
Freddie,
when I watched the Peter Reinhardt thing, and what interested me about you is the Hypermix, which you talked about the Hypermix.
Yeah.
And I make all types of bread. I don't just make pizza. I make artisan breads, bagels, and just different things.
Yeah.
So I have a Nutrimil mixer, which is like a budget Bosch mixer.
Yeah. No, it's good. I like that mixer.
So I was like, this Hypermix. And I knew Modernist Cuisine had Hypermix wine. So I was actually talking with Scott Wiener. I go, hey, man, have you heard of this Hypermix? He goes, oh, yeah, Noel told me all about it. So I tried to figure out what it was just on my own. So
all right,
I basically made a sponge with 60% of the flour, all the water.
Okay.
Sprinkled the yeast over. I'm using about 0.5% of yeast.
Okay.
So I would make a sponge, let it sit for 15 or 20 minutes, then add the olive oil and turn on medium.
Yeah.
And then let it rest for 5 minutes. And then I would let it rip.
Okay.
Like high speed for like 3 minutes.
Okay.
And I've tried it twice. I did it once at 75%.
Yeah. And
then once at 77%.
Okay.
Hydration.
Okay.
The 75% came out great.
Okay.
The 77, I pushed it too much.
No, I don't think you pushed it too much. I think.
But it was real. It was very. I couldn't shape it once I.
That sounds about right.
And I had to roll it with a rolling pin.
So here's the thing. Let me cover a couple things. So you actually have hit upon a lot of important topics. So you are, to me, an advanced home baker.
Okay.
Right? All the ingredients that you're using, it sounds to me like there's a good reason for using them. I assume that you didn't just start throwing milk powder into your.
No, it was my grandmother when I was making Lebanese bread.
It's all good. So here's the thing about hypermixing. It's part of a tradition of mixing, right? So in the intermediate class, we cover the improved mix. In the basic class, we cover the hand mix or the short mix. And in the advanced 1 class, we cover the intensive mix, right? Mm-hmm. Now, the difference between an intensive mix, which is something you might use to make like either a brioche, an enriched dough, right? Or maybe like if you ever made a challah bread before, they wouldn't necessarily use an intensive mix. I would. Anytime there's lots of either hydration or fat like butter or eggs. Yeah. So these would be reasons to do
it. Or just like a sandwich bread.
Even it really depends. Like if technically if you're making like a sandwich bread, you might want to do it as well so you get that beautiful volume. Now, a couple things that I would caution you on. Number one, you got to do everything in the right order. All right. So there's a lot of things about the process that you have to respect. You know how Tony G talks about respecting the craft?
Yeah.
All right. So there's an order for things. And so you got to make sure you're adding all your ingredients in the right order, right? Also, when you're using a mixer, you got to dial it up. Don't go from first gear to fifth gear. Don't go from first gear to eighth gear. Dial it up, right?
Yeah.
You got to figure out your water temperature, your flour temperature. You got to know your air temperature. You got to figure out your friction factor, and you got to get everything dialed in so you nail your desired dough temperature.
Let me ask you this question. It seemed like the friction factor was less with the higher hydration.
It is way less. It is way less.
So the first dough I did was 75, and the final dough temp was 73.4.
That sounds good.
The 77% was about 72 degrees.
Yeah.
I just did a 73% today, and it was 78.
Got it.
And is that too high, or?
No. So here's the thing. It depends on your fermentation schedule. It depends on your flour. It depends on the style of dough you're looking to do. But here's what I would say. Number one, don't use any pre-ferments. Don't use any pre-ferments in this mix because it's hard enough as it is, number one. Number two, if you're going to do a hyper mix, don't do it at 73 or 75 or even 77% hydration. You should go higher. You should be at least 80 or 85%.
Okay.
Especially if you want to go into hyper mixing, right?
Sure.
And so what I teach people to do in the beginning and the intermediate class is to mix not to full gluten development, but less than full development and finish with stretch and folds. The intensive mix, you generally mix to 100% of gluten development, and the hyper mix, you still mix to 100%, but you go at a much faster speed than you ever would. And so like in a typical spiral mixer, you might have first speed at 60 RPMs and you might have second speed at 120. But some of the quicker mixers, like Marcy had an ABS mixer. I think she said at 135 degrees RPMs for first speed, 270 on second. You can really do a hyper mix at 270 RPMs.
Okay. Is that timing that I'm using, is that too short?
It's too short. And so when Justin and I used to do the in-class mixes, or now when you take our video on demand advanced classes, you'll see that some people's mixers go on second speed for 20 minutes and still don't get there. Some people's mixers go on second speed and get there in 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Some people are using home mixers like me. I have my KitchenAid over here, and we go to first speed, second speed, third speed, fourth speed every minute till we get to eighth speed. And even then it could go for
another 12.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean,
have you heard of this Nutrimil? I was using a KitchenAid, but I couldn't get enough. I can only use about 700 grams of flour before it climb up the hook.
Yeah.
So I got this
more
Nutrimil.
More water.
Yeah, I got the Nutrimil. Now I can make like 5 pounds of dough in it. But
here's the thing. You don't need to do a hyper mix if you're not doing a high hydration dough. By my standards, that's for American flour, that starts at 85% hydration. If you're using really soft Italian flours or heirloom wheats, that might start at 78 or even 77% hydration.
Yeah.
But you got to go for the hydration if you're gonna utilize the low friction factor and the high hydration that you can utilize with a hyper mix.
Now, Noel, what class would you recommend that I take at this point?
Well, it sounds like you might be skipping some of the steps. So what I would say is you might want to start with the intermediate class.
Okay.
And then I'll make you a deal. If you take the intermediate class and you're like, Noel, I feel like I already know all this stuff, I'll switch you over to the advanced class.
That sounds great. I'll do that.
So I'm not trying to sell you 2 classes. I'm trying to get you into the right class. So I'll make you that deal. If you feel like, Noel, I've been baking for 10 years, thanks, but I need more advanced, I'll just switch you over.
Okay. Sounds great. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
You know what? I appreciate the journey that you've been on. You're asking a lot of good questions, and you're a humble baker, which is the way bakers should be. I get a lot of guys that have they're full of piss and vinegar, and they don't have the experience to back it up, and that's not what baking good bread is.
It's all patience, man.
It's all patience, right? It's all patience. Freddie, what part of the world are you in?
I am in Beverly Hills.
Wait a minute, you have an accent.
Texas. I'm Lebanese, and I learned how to bake bread from my grandmother, making Lebanese pita bread. So
I always wanted to go to Lebanon. Yeah,
I make everything, man. I make bagels, sandwich bread. My obsession now is squishy sandwich or hamburger buns. So I try to replicate Wonder Bread and stuff.
Yeah, no, I get it.
Yeah.
It hurts that sweet spot for you.
Yeah.
Where do you go in LA for good bread? Do you have any bakeries or pizzerias you like?
I make it.
Oh, that's good for you.
I make during this quarantine, this COVID, I've been making sandwich bread. I make a rye wheat it's basically 70% white, with sandwich bread, but I kind of make sandwich bread for my friends, pizzas.
That's great.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
I make all types of pizzas, pan pizzas, the thin crust, tavern style.
Awesome.
But I think you're right. I kind of taught myself just reading books and stuff. I've never really been to a class.
You're what I call a prosumer, right? You're a consumer, you're not a professional, but you have a lot of the sensibilities of a professional because you have a lot of experience. But if you skipped a few steps by kind of taking a step back and making sure you're not skipping any important ones, you might find that you already have all you need to know and your recipes are great. Your process is just a little bit off.
Yeah. Well, I'm a guitar player too.
Okay.
And my one of my guitar teachers called me a guitar bastard.
I'm curious why. You have a good reason for it?
We're talking about now.
What kind of music do you like?
I played rock, blues, everything. I've been playing for 30 years, just about as long as I've been cooking. So
that's awesome.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
But I look forward to taking your class. No, I'll definitely sign up.
That sounds great. And come back for office hours. We like talking to you.
Yeah,
Great.
Freddie,
and
when this is all done, we're coming over for some burgers and some pizza and stuff like that.
Beverly Hills Burgers, I'm down.
Anytime.
Come on.
Anytime.
Noel and I are on the west side. I'm Venice, Santa Monica.
I'd love to meet you guys. Thank you.
That would be great.
Yeah, Gary says maybe he's worked with you. So awesome.
Okay, awesome.
Cool. Thanks, Freddie.
Thank
so
you,
much,
buddy.
bud. Yep. There we go.
That was a good one. That was a good one.
That was great. So, 3 minutes to spare. No more questions in the queue. That was a really good one. Yeah. I mean, I definitely think getting that hyper mix, I like to call it the spaz mix. That always has a, Gary wants us to make sure. What do we got on the docket? Let's look at the.
You know what? We don't have as much on the docket as we should. I'm behind on the docket.
Yeah, we've been, as Dr. Dre would say, in the lab with the pen and the pad, diligently working on getting everything up and out and ready to rock.
It takes a long time to get the new classes out, and there's a lot of steps, and there's a lot of people that we're working with. So we have. I'm going to be doing a class with Chef Joey from Folks down in Orange County. He has a sourdough pizza that he bakes on a Marsal oven. And he gets really, really, really nice results. So I think that's at folksrestaurant.com. I'm going to be working with Matt Rainey. He's at Slice and Pint. He's doing a traditional New York pizza, and he's going to be showing us his incredible recipes for meatballs and also chicken wings.
Ooh.
And he's one of these guys, both of these guys, they started in fine dining, and then they went to pizza, and they're really enjoying themselves. But what's really great is that these guys are super precise, and they nail all their dough temps, and they understand that if they don't, how to change things up. And also their toppings are insane. Absolutely insane. So let's see. Matt worked for Daniel Boulud as a sous chef, which is pretty awesome. Let's see. We're also going to be doing some pretty big events coming up in April. We're going to do. That's how Justin and I got started online doing the fundraiser last year, and end of March, beginning of April for Pizza Expo. It wasn't Pizza Expo. It was in place of Pizza Expo in our tiny little minds, Justin. Right? We think we're the Pizza Expo, right?
Oh yeah. I mean, don't tell them, but
yeah, don't tell them. So we're gonna do a professional, like a 4-hour or a 5-hour class that's gonna be on 4/20. And then on 4/23, we're working with a couple of really cool sponsors. We're going to do a prosumer level class. So we've got some really cool guests coming up. If anybody has heard of Sourdough Duffy, you can find him on TikTok and on Instagram. He's a guy named Matt Duffy who I met when I was working up in Toronto last year at Descendant Pizza. We were friends on Instagram, and he saw that I was in town. He picked me up from my hotel and took me out 2 nights. One night we went out on the town, and we went to a bunch of awesome pizzerias in Toronto. And then the next time I went over to his house for dinner. It was super awesome to be on the road for 2 weeks and actually get invited to someone's house for dinner. So you're not eating pizza and sleeping in hotel rooms all the time. Right, Justin?
Oh, man.
Gets
life
old.
on the road. Right. So we do have this Saturday, we're doing Adam Kuban, yeah?
It's going to be a big one. So this is our 4th class we're doing with Adam?
It is our third bar pie that we've done with him.
Third bar fly.
And his bar pie that we've done with him and his daughter.
She'll be back.
Yeah.
Justin, I don't even know if you know that. So on 420, the thing we're planning with Adam is going to be, he's going to give a virtual tour of the 40 or so pizza styles that are known to be American.
Oh, wow.
So he drew up a map back in the day of all the cool pizza styles that he has hashtag Columbusing discovered, right? And so he's going to give us a virtual tour of those. So for people who aren't familiar, as familiar as they would like to be with all of the American regional styles, that's going to be super fun.
Gary is saying, please do a Kanoto class with wood-fired oven. I think we pretty much did that.
I would like to do another one of those. That was a super popular class.
Yeah, we're about to. Aren't we going to launch some VODs?
We're gonna do the VOD version of that. Gary, you should attend that one. You know, we're trying to get Michele to come back. Michele is blowing up right now, and so we were lucky to get him for one class when we did. Now he's big time. I don't want to say what he's doing because I'm not allowed to say, but he's doing some really cool stuff. So we will get him back eventually, but it might take a little bit. And but he and Adam are the biggest selling classes we've ever done. Wouldn't you say?
Yeah. I mean, back in the day, we had a lot of people in those intermediate and advanced, but it doesn't seem like the VODs are filling that void these days. So Dane is asking about using the Mock Mill 100. Do you know what that is? He says,
what that is.
Yeah, what grains do you use with that?
Oh, that's a very general question. How about this? Let's bring him on. We'll answer that question, and then we'll wrap it up.
Okay, copy that. Dwayne, where are you? Here we go. I'm going to promote you to panelist. And Gary has a couple extras just at the end that will, Gary trying to jump in there. Dwayne, if you're there, we'll talk about the Mock Mill 100. If anybody doesn't know what that is, it's a mill that you can use. I believe it's a home mill. Is that what it is?
Yeah, for sure. Did you say Dwayne? It looks like it could be Diane. Dyane.
Yeah, I can't read. Sorry.
I can't read either.
Diane.
There's
no W. There's no W. I'm so sorry.
She's got a lot of vowels in her name. I have 2. She has 3. She wins. She's got 3 vowels in her last name too. That's pretty amazing. She's got more vowels than consonants.
God, sorry about that, Diane. Jeez, come on down. Start your video or just unmute if you want.
I'm the reader and Justin's the talker, and neither of us listen. So whatever you say, trust us, we're not listening.
You guys know you start video later. That's just fine. If you want to just start the audio so we can understand what you're looking for, I'm asking you to unmute currently. Hello?
Hello?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we
Diane.
can. Sorry about that, Diane.
No
Sorry.
problem. Everybody does that, no problem. I'm at the very, very beginning stage. I took Noel's beginning class a while back. I bought a Mock Mill 100.
Good.
And I just don't know what grain would be the most appropriate to use.
Well, that is a good question. So let's talk about what kind of pizza you want to make. What kind of pizza you want to make?
I don't know.
Diane? Okay. How about this? What part of the country are you in?
I'm in Los Angeles.
Oh, that's good. All right. So how about this? Where would you buy grains from? What part of LA do you live in?
Either from Nan over at Grist and Toll.
Great. Are you on the east side or the west side?
Either one.
Okay.
She's Gourmandise or she's, in her own place.
Nan is awesome. Let me give you another one to check out. It's one of my absolute favorites. Have you heard of Kandarian Farms with a K?
No.
Okay. If you get a chance to come to the Wednesday Farmers Market.
I do.
He might also be at the Hollywood, but if you look up Kandarian, you can find out where he is. His grains are incredible. He has grains of different colors. He has grains of different flavors, different aromas, different nuttiness, right? And so what's really cool is that you can go and buy grains from him straight up. you can discuss how to mill them. If you want, you can say, hey, Gary, I'll be back next week. Would you mind like selling me a bag of grains, but like milling half of it, or selling me 2 bags of grains, but only milling 1? And so you can really start a relationship with the guy who's growing your wheat. And I would say that that's the conversation you want to be having. If you want to learn about dialing in better flavor, color, aroma, texture, fermentation, tolerance, if you want to learn, like if you want to make a purple sourdough loaf, right? If you want to make something that's more nutty or more bitter or something that works well with sourdough, right? He's the perfect guy to talk to.
Okay.
So I would stay away from store-bought grains, and whenever possible, I would talk to people who are actually growing the flour. I think it's a really important relationship to have. The other thing that I think is important is having fresh flour. And so what you'll probably find is when you mill flour and then hold it for a while, it changes. And so what the people that I know all say, who I have milled flour for sure in big batches and small. And what everybody says is when that flour is fresh, it's the best. But a lot of people are trying to mill with wheat that's not fresh. And so if you get it from the source, if you get it from somebody like Mr. Kandarian, you're going to get the best possible flour to mill, and you'll have the best benefits from your home mill.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. I appreciate it.
Yeah, and if you can't make it to Santa Monica, then Nan is amazing. She gets really, really nice grains, and also she's very helpful. But you might have to buy in larger quantities. Does she sell less than like 5 pounds?
Yes, she does 2.5.
Oh, that's good. Kandarian, I think he sells in even 1 pound bags, and so he's super cool. I just found some wheat that I had in the refrigerator, and I gave it to a buddy of mine who was kind of lost in the back. It had been there for probably 9 months, so technically it's not fresh anymore. But I know that if you refrigerate your wheat berries and you keep them nice and cold, and then you mill them properly, they're still awesome. So a buddy of mine made some really good bread, and we were using this purple wheat that I had used about half of, and it was still really fresh, really aromatic. It really, really makes a difference if you have fresh wheat.
And I do put it in the freezer. The grains that I bought before.
Freezer is good. Coldest part of your refrigerator is good. You know, Justin and I have had bad luck with. I mean, you have to be careful because I have some flour right now that's been in the refrigerator for all of COVID, and it's gotten a little moist, and I think it's begun to ferment a little bit. So probably the freezer is better than a wet fridge.
Okay, thank you very much.
Kandarian, look him up online and go talk to him.
I will do that. Thank you.
All right. Bye,
All
Diane.
right, Diane. Thank you. Thank you. All right, Gary's got one last question. Why don't you look at it? I'm going to bring everybody on just for a goodbye, okay?
Quick bye-bye. Have you ever seen a high hydration dough come out of the mixer and then get stretched over the countertop for 10 minutes, probably an auto lease, before it's formed and then placed into fridge to bulk? Saw it on YouTube and it freaked me out. Now that freaks me out also. So here's the thing. When it comes out of the mixer, it should already be it's not auto leased anymore. Auto lease comes before you put the yeast in and before you finish the gluten development. So Gary Scardina, tell us what hallucination you saw on YouTube, and we'll try to help.
Put the link in there, Gary.
What
are you talking about?
Well, what's up, guys?
What's up,
bud.
Gary?
So I ran across these high hydration dough videos on YouTube, and I watched the first one. I went, "Wow, this is actually pretty cool." And then I watched another one. And he's got this technique that after he gets his first mix done, he puts it on the countertop and he stretches it out and pulls it, leaves it, and then stretches out until it looks like this big chamois that's just sitting on the countertop, and he lets it for 10 minutes. Then he picks it up and it stretches and into a ball, and then he throws it down and he firms that on a ball and he goes to the rest of the routine. So, I mean, he says that's to get air into it, and I'm looking at it going, well, it came out of the mixer and now it's sitting for 10 minutes. And I don't know. I've never seen anything. You can check it out.
Technically, if you haven't started the fermentation yet, then yes, you're not supposed to have any gluten development at the end of your first mix. So he's doing something a little wacky, but if he has a good reason to do it, I would really like to know what that is. He's breaking at least 2 rules that I can think of, but if he's got a good reason, I would love to know what it is.
Yeah,
Contact
Gary,
that guy.
Is that at the end of the mix? Is that when the mix is finished, or it's during the mix for the auto lace?
No, it's. I believe it's at the end of the mix.
Okay.
So he's doing a stretch and fold on the table then.
Right. Yeah, it's the table.
You can do a stretch and fold on the table, then he's not breaking any rules.
Yeah.
I mean, literally, in the second,
it could be a slap and fold. Good guess, Freddie. I love those slap and folds.
That's what. But in the second video, he actually gets up on a ladder and pulls the thing.
Oh, you got to bring that video. This is insane. All right, is he Italian? Because those Italians, they get away with murder, and they're like, we've been doing it for generations. I'm like,
I'll send you the link to it.
This is my grandmother's ladder. We always use this ladder. Come on.
His product looks incredible. So I nearly fell out of my chair.
Well, Gary, next week maybe put the link in the chat.
Link. Come on.
Yeah, put the link in the chat so we can see it and we can talk about it. That sounds fun.
No, I had one last thing I wanted to ask you,
Freddie. What do you got?
When with this, like the thing I was experimenting with the Hypermix.
Yeah.
I noticed one batch I did. I balled it and then refrigerated it for another day after 72 hours. This last one, which I did 77%, I bulk fermented it and then just balled it and let it sit at room temperature for about 5 hours.
Yeah.
And I noticed that the refrigerated ball had micro blisters.
Yeah.
The one that I did just letting it do at room temperature did not have micro blisters. So is that a thing too?
It could be a thing. It also depends on how warm they are when they got out of the mixer. Sometimes the warmer doughs out of the mixer can have those micro blisters.
Okay. I'd like
those micro blisters are elusive for sure.
Figure out which class I should be in because
it sounds to me like you should start with the intermediate, and if that's not advanced enough for you, it'll be on us. We'll dial you up.
Cool, man. Thank you.
Because the opposite, if you start with the advanced and you go back, that we charge 100% for.
Okay.
But if you take our advice and our advice is wrong, then we cover your losses. All right.
Our advice has never been wrong.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? Justin, there was one guy that complained about every class he ever took with me. And the last time he complained was when he skipped the intermediate, went to the advanced, and I made him pay for the intermediate. Because I told him, don't do that.
Hey,
he was looking for a reason.
I love it. I think whatever in intermediate, I'll learn something. I'm sure.
My intermediate is like other people's advanced. I always say that, and people think I'm bragging. I'm not bragging. I'm just saying, like, for me, that's intermediate, and then high hydration and pre-ferments, that's really advanced. I don't know what's more advanced than hyper mixing and 3 different pre-ferments in a dough. That's very advanced to me.
Cool. Stop bragging, Noel.
No, I'm not bragging. I'm like, look, I'll be the first to say in the advanced class, I can't handle 3 preferments. I've tried and failed. 2 at the most on a good day. 1 should be enough.
Yeah.
Right. We work with, I'm talking about Josh Hernandez there. Josh and I both worked at Bestia at different times, and we work with a chef there named Ori. Ori is one of the great chefs of the world, if you haven't heard of him. And
I've been there.
He can handle 2 pre-ferments, all right, on a professional level. But none of us combined are the man that he was when he was half our age, you know? Yeah. That guy. And maybe it's, I don't know what it is. His mother is French, his father is Israeli. He moved from one country to another and he had to take it on the chin from the Israeli boys. He had his comeuppance, you know? Yeah. So he earned his stripe. He worked in Italian, traditional cooking for a long time. He learned all the rules before he learned to break them. So he's from the school of hard knocks. I would say that Ori has perfect pitch in terms of flavor and even fermentation. There's guys with perfect pitch in music, Freddie, you know what I'm talking about, and they can hear the chord changes coming around the corner. Yeah. And if you make a change during a song that's not written down, they'll land on the note at exactly the right time.
It's like Frank Zappa used to say, I worked for Warner Brothers for 8 fucking years, right?
There you go. Frank Zappa was a fucking genius, right? You wouldn't know from listening to all of his music, but he was a fucking genius, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Sometimes it sounds like he was just whacked out on drugs, and maybe he was.
No, I don't think so.
I don't think so. There you go.
He didn't do it. He was pretty. He didn't. Yeah. He didn't dabble. That was his thing.
That I don't know.
There you go.
Anybody else?
Yeah, Gary's hand. Gary, I saw. Thank you for putting the. Thank you for putting the link. Yeah, the link is in the chat if anybody wants to check that out. Thank you very much, Gary.
James, any questions? Tell us now or forever hold your peace, or until next week, not forever. All right, sir. Nice to see you. Thanks for joining us. You guys, thank you. I want to say thank you to Justin. I want to say thank you to Gary and to Freddie and all y'all for joining us. Thanks, Josh. Good to see your face again. Josh, stick around for a minute. I want to talk to you. Thanks for joining us. And Justin, please take us out.
You guys know the dealio. This is all about that dough. That's that dough foundation that we love to chit chat about. Thank you for spending this time with us. We are still all in this together. So please, please, please stay safe, stay strong, belong with one another. The opposite of being short, because we all belong here together. And you know the dealio, pizza always, even pineapple. Thank you, Gary. What is that? And always pizza. Thanks, guys. Pieces and slices.
The Garys have Wonder Twin powers.
Pieces and slices. All right, everybody. We'll see you later. Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Good
Thank
night.
you, everybody. Good job.
Thanks
Thanks hanging out with you.